Hi, welcome to the Lone Star Dowsers April 2023 presentation. I'm Mary Lindsay Wilson. I am your host, and we have an amazing guest tonight, Eileen McKusick. I am thrilled. She has a lot that she's done. I'm going to read some of her highlights. Now, Eileen has been researching the many different facets of health and human potential for the past 35 years. And way back in 1996, she picked up her first set of tuning forks and began incorporating them in her massage therapy practice. And after she started to witness the positive effects on her clients, she began to start to research the effects of therapeutic sound on the human body and the energy field. And so it ended up creating sound therapy method of Biofield Tuning. Then she went back to school and got her master's in Integrative Education. And her thesis was exploring the effects of audible sound on the human body. So now Eileen's got 2 books under her belt on sound therapy and biofield science. The first one is Tuning the Human Biofield, Healing with Vibrational Sound Therapy, which won a 2015 Nautilus Silver Award and the 2017 Gold COVR Award. And then her second book is Electric Body, Electric Health. And it's a groundbreaking look at the electric nature of the human body, emotions, and actually life itself. So welcome, Eileen. We are thrilled to have you here. And as always with the Dowsers, my intention is to inspire and educate people on dowsing and how we can use dowsing in all these amazing ways and just spread that information and help one another.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Thanks, Mary, for having me here. And hello, Dowsers. My very first talk that I got invited to give was actually to the Vermont Dowsing organization. And that was an easy crowd, I have to say, for my first talk because you already have an understanding of subtle energies and being sensitive to these things. And you know how to tap into the ether for information, and you know how to use devices to find energy. And that's really kind of what I do. Biofield tuning and this work with tuning forks is very similar to dowsing. I actually had the good fortune, some of you may know of Patrick McManaway, who's a very well-known dowser, and he was very high up in the National Dowsers organization and also in England too. I think he was like president of the British Society of Dowsers for years, but he's my neighbor. He lives right down the road from me here in Vermont. And I learned, both he and my 2 sons, who were 6 and 9 at the time, we all learned how to use dowsing rods from him. And we discovered that we had a dragon line, a pretty big dragon line running through our property. There's actually, here in Vermont, we have the Green Mountains, and there's a yang line that runs along the spine of the Green Mountains. And we just happened to be on a high plateau in the Green Mountains, and we were able to identify by the way the pine trees were stunted, and by the way there was an apple tree growing in the line of pine trees, and then find it with the dowsing rods. And so that was really fun. I also built a labyrinth with him as well. So it was just neat too. And then we did experiments with, because what we do is we find the edge of the biofield, and I'm going to show a slide presentation so you can understand what I'm talking about when I say the biofield, person's energy field, really. I mean, it's essentially the magnetic field that surrounds the electric current that flows through our body. But just like you can find the edge of somebody's field with dowsing rods, you can find the edge with tuning forks too. And when I was teaching my sons this, because they had learned dowsing and now they were learning to do tuning too, I asked my son, again, he was around 6, like, well, what happens to the tuning fork? When it gets to the place where the dowsing rods swing out, the tuning fork gets into that place. What's going on? And he said, the tuning fork gets more vibrating. Which it does. So, hey, because there is more energy there, and the tuning fork is interacting with the ambient field there, and it does get more vibrating. And that's really the whole premise of this work, is like finding where in the field it gets more vibrating. And you can do the same thing with the dowsing rod. You could do the same thing with a pendulum. So So there's really kind of a lot of crossover here.
I kind of liken it to we're like trees. If you slice a tree, you have all those rings and it tells the story of what that tree has experienced in its life. And I guess our biofield really is the same thing.
Yeah, it really is. We have, the record of our lives is really very much like in tree rings in our field. And just like you can read the tree rings and be like, oh, that was there wasn't much water that year. That was a rough year for this tree. You can find the same thing in the human field, in the human record. And it really is like dropping a needle on an album and reading the record of somebody's life. So, yeah, and it's the sort of thing that all of you would take quite naturally to, because you're already sort of inclined in this way. Years ago, when my practice was very busy, when my book came out, right before Tuning the Human Biofield came out in 2014, I already had a very busy practice. Even though I was in the middle of nowhere in Vermont, like very poor, rural, conservative area, not the kind of place you think that people would be like going to see a tuning fork healer. But this work really works on the physical, mental, emotional, relational, ancestral, environmental, like it kind of works on all levels of our being, because all levels of our being are really some kind of vibration. And when my book came out, suddenly I'm getting people from all over the world, because we do it at a distance as well. And the way that I work is I hold a hockey puck in one hand and the tuning fork in the other, and I activate the fork. And I was doing this like thousands of times a week. And what happened was my left hand decided to stop working. It's just, I got a repetitive stress injury basically from all of that whacking. And so I couldn't hold the puck anymore for a while until I got it rehabbed. And people were like, well, why don't you just use your hands to like heal people? And I was like, I'm not a healer. I'm a scientist. Like, I don't have a healing practice. I have a clinical research thing going on here. And I'm learning all about the language of vibration and the biofield and the like. I can't imagine anything more boring than like hanging out, putting my hands on people all day. So that's really where I've come at it, more as driven by the curiosity of this, because it is so curious and it is so interesting, and have always looked at it as research. In fact, I just opened up a whole new avenue of research this week, which I'll explain when we get to that slide. And you guys might find that of particular interest, because it's as cutting edge as you can get in the biofield research realm. So, all right, Mary, do you have any questions or thoughts, or should we just jump into the slideshow?
Yeah, let's just jump in. I mean, I know you're doing all these amazing things with sound. So yeah, let's jump in. And then if you guys have questions, you can put them in the chat and we'll address them. And then Eileen said she will do a little tuning for us at the end of our call.
Yeah. Yeah, good. And, I'll keep the chat open. So, if I see questions going by, I can try to address them as they arise. And if I don't see them or don't get to them, we can take them at the end. All right.
Sounds
so
good.
Let me share my screen. Okay. Electric body, electric life. So this is just a little bit about me here. I'm obviously the creator of the sound therapy method Biofield Tuning. These are the 2 books that I've written. I've also created a line of tuning forks and tuning fork accessories, including the sonic slider tuning fork, which is a sort of universally useful self-care tool to help you to relax. This is pretty much the thrust of what we do with this work, is to get people to relax. It's really actually pretty simple. I'm also the founder of the Biofield Tuning Institute, which is a nonprofit that conducts grant-funded, peer-reviewed research. And we just this past week had a study published in Complementary Therapies in Medicine that shows that this work really helps to reduce anxiety. And I've got some information about that further along. And we also have a fully funded 3-year follow-up study, a bigger one with a control group, that is currently underway. So not, doing the science here, which I think, is called for. So this whole sort of field of academic understanding of what I was encountering when I first started using tuning forks and in 1996 and over the sort of 10 years or so that I was experimenting with, I discovered that there was phenomenon going on around the body, that I was encountering these areas where the tuning forks got more vibrating, and it felt like there was mass, like there was something there. And then I could move it with the tuning forks. And I was like, what is this stuff I'm encountering? And what law of physics is dictating the fact that I can move this stuff with a vibrating tuning fork? And I was very puzzled about it because we're not taught that our body has an electrical system. This is something I had to figure out. And part of figuring it out was learning that there was a fourth state of matter called plasma. Now, when I first started doing this research in 2010, and then presenting it, I think the first time I presented on it was 2011. Nobody had ever heard of plasma. Now, when I ask at talks that I give, who's heard of plasma, the fourth state of matter, many people raised their hands. So this has changed a lot. But back then, people were like, "What? There's a fourth state of matter called plasma?" I didn't know. I didn't know when I first learned about it. This is a Tesla ball or a plasma ball. You can stick your finger on it, and because you are a conductor, the spark will go to your finger. This is plasma. There's also a state of matter called ether, which y'all probably know about, is my guess. But this was also a revelation to me. I'm like, what do you mean there's two more states of matter? And these states of matter, plasma and ether, are illuminated and connected, right? So we've taken out the light-filled connective states of matter and just left us with solid, liquid, and gas where everything is separate, because we're all in a world of where there are forces of divide and conquer that want us to believe that things are separate, when really everything is one field. The luminiferous ether, the ocean of clear light that through torsion spins itself, and it spins itself into the positive and negative charges, traveling charges of plasma. So everything, and then plasma will precipitate down. It'll turn into a gas, and then gases precipitate into liquids, and liquids precipitate into solids. But ultimately, everything is just spun light. Everything is just waves in space. And solidity is an artifact of our human perception. And all of our environment is electric. So the air we breathe actually has light in it, is a plasma. And when you breathe in air, your blood goes from being dark red to bright red because you just added light to it. You just added electricity. The oxygen molecule carries 4 free electrons, and this is pretty much mostly what we run on. Right? Because you can go for weeks without food and days without liquids. You can only go a few minutes without air, because that's where our primary electrical juice that our electrical system runs on comes from. So certainly lightning is a plasma. Northern lights are a plasma. When we go to the ocean, right, the ionized air in the ocean helps you to feel better. It can be energizing and relaxing because there's more light, there's more energy there, and certainly the salt and the sand and all of that is all really good for your own plasma body. The forest, right? Forest bathing, it's a thing. More plasma rich environment. I call it ions. It's the same thing, ionized. The mycelial network. So some of you may be getting hip to the mushroom craze that Paul Stamets and others have been facilitating, and our growing understanding of the mycelial network in the soil, right? So underneath all of that is a network of fungi that connects everything and sends light and information and fluids, and all kinds of information and communication gets passed along the mycelial network. We are all electric creatures. The uncreated universe is light undivided on the ether. And the created universe is light divided into mated pairs, positive and negative charge. And that's just the branching nature of life itself, electricity. We see that branching in all kinds of aspects of nature, including our brain and in things like neural connections. So our brain is electric. Our brain waves are electric, and they radiate out through our skulls, right? You can hang out with people and you know what they're thinking, right? That probably happens a lot with people that you're close to. You can kind of read their thoughts, or you're thinking the same thing at the same time. When you get an EEG, right, those brainwaves have come out through your skull and they're reading the frequency of them through an EEG. Our heart is electric, an electrically driven oscillator that sends blood spiraling through our veins, oxygenated blood, bright red because it's got electric juice in it.
Well, and that's why I guess if your heart stops, they electrically shock you.
They electrically shock you. Yeah. Or you get a pacemaker. If your heart is struggling to keep rhythm,
right,
you get a pacemaker. Yeah, same thing. Even our digestion is really a process of electrical fermentation that strips the electrons, the electricity from the food. So we want to eat food that's living, right? Ideally, you want to have food that still has light in it, or that you could put a little LED light in and it would power it, right? It can make a little food battery. So we really want to eat living food. And it's also useful, I think, to sort of think of your digestive tract like a wood stove. You want to put food into it that's going to burn for a long time. I'm a big fan of nutrient dense, calorie dense food, just because it incinerates, just thinking of it electrically. And this is why things like fermented foods or sourdough bread, kefir, kimchi, things like that are electrically alive can help our digestion, because it's adding more aliveness to the mix in there. Our bones are crystalline structures that make electricity when compressed. So all of our bones have light in them. Our blood carries a charge. Lots of iron in there. This is fascia, which looks remarkably like the mycelial network. In fact, I found different pictures of mycelial network in the forest and fascia in our bodies, and it's astonishingly similar. We tend to think of ourselves, well, we know we have bacteria and viruses and parasites and things in us that make us up, but we don't often think that we also have mushrooms in us, that we have fungus in us that is also part of what has created us, right? They've pretty much figured out that the first life forms were fungus. So of course, way back in our DNA, like within us, it's the fungus, the bacteria that composes these larger systems. And so our fascia sends fluids and information and light. In fact, our fascia is the biggest organ in the body. It's bigger than the skin because it's everywhere skin is, and it's all deep and in between as well. So we are connected through the ether and the plasma to all that is, because it's all one light. And it's also all one water. We're 99% water by molecules. So the biggest part of our composition, as far as little parts and pieces go, is water, and it's all one water, right? And the light in us that powers us, the light of our soul, the light of our consciousness, these things are all really indivisible. We're connected to the water because we're always evaporating and bringing in water, and so we're constantly exchanging water with our environment. Now, water and light, they've been around for a long time, and we know that light can store information, and certainly that water can store information. Certainly bones, because they're crystalline, can also store information. And the bones are made of, the same earth that's been recycling over and over and turning into many things. So really all the answers really are within. And this is something that I've learned as somebody who's been self-taught. I have had very few teachers in the sound healing realm. Most of my understanding with tuning forks and everything has really come from my own inner teacher and my own inner wisdom and my own ability to connect with the ether as a clear channel and just receive information. I think everybody has the ability to do that, whether we just do it automatically or whether we use tools like as dowsers do. And certainly you all know that that information is there for the finding in the Akasha, just in, right here, like everything. I can like stick a fork right here and tune into anything because it's all one thing.
Stick a fork in it.
Stick a fork in it, right? It's like somebody once said, your tuning fork is like a magic wand, only better because it talks and you understand what it's saying. It's a very useful tool. So this is just images of a torus, this sort of self-sustaining shape that repeats itself throughout nature. And this is the image of the biofield as I've come to see it. So we have electric current running through the body. It's a central channel, right? So torus is a sphere with this spiral channel down the middle. I see energy flowing bi-directionally. So we draw in positive charge from above our head. We draw in negative charge from below our feet. And this energy flows bi-directionally through the torus. Now, the outside is not smooth. It's banded and it has 12 bands. And each one of these bands contains 12 strands, kind of like fiber optics. Remember those fiber optics lamps when we were kids, right? The sort of strands of light. So now this is purely hypothetical. This is not based on any kind of scientific instrumentation. It's based on my own observation, basically, that sort of led me, through pattern recognition, through moments of insight to just be like, oh, that's what's going on here. And then these waves that you see coming off the sides of the body that are horizontal to the ground, those are the standing waves that I see as holding our memories. So in the biofield model, our memories are not in our brain, or maybe they are as well, but they're stored in these standing waves that are within the toroidal bubble that is our electrical system. And when I first started working in the field and sort of discovering that there was stuff going on out here, it took a little while for it to dawn on me that what I was encountering as I moved a tuning fork through this space was memories, that it was specific memories. And if you think about it, like everything that we see and smell and touch and taste and hear and feel and think, it's all electrical signals in the body. So it would make sense that our memories are stored in our electrical system. And we also know from other models that huge amounts of information can be contained in standing waves. So it appears to me that our memories are magnetically, patternly encoded vibrationally in this field. And what's interesting is that there are allegedly these structures on cell membranes called primary cilia that house these microtubules. And there's a theory that it's these microtubules on our cells that are actually the antennas that connect us to the information in our field. And they found that in Alzheimer's patients, these little microtubules are failing, that they're not working. And so that would make sense that the memories are still there in the field, but the apparatus for retrieving those memories is not functioning. So it seems like these little antennas are like the interface between the information in the field and how it processes in the body. So in biofield tuning, I start from the edge of the field and move towards the body, towards the midline of the body, with a vibrating tuning fork. And what I'm looking for as I do that is areas of perturbation and resistance. And the tuning fork will start to vibrate. It'll start to make a different sound. It will feel like it's stuck. It's sort of the oddest feeling. You're moving along slowly with a tuning fork and all of a sudden it doesn't want to move. And any place where there's noise in the signal and resistance in the flow is some kind of, generally, a trauma response to some kind of difficult life situation where, the needle that's putting out the output of what our vibe is suddenly starts going a little crazy, and we go into a state of resistance. We're not breathing, we're having some kind of trauma response. And so that's what we're finding these places. And any place where we find energy that's stuck in the magnetic field, there's a corresponding electrical jam up in the body. There's some kind of subconscious tension. And what I've really found from doing this work now all of these years is that most of what ails us is tension based. I mean, you think about any kind of disorder, pain, okay, yeah, tension. Depression, that's kind of like a heavy tension. Anxiety is a jittery tension. High blood pressure is a deep, old tension that's really held very deeply. Even cancer is a consequence of oxygen not getting to places, right? Cancer grows in an anaerobic environment. Why is oxygen not getting to a place? Because it's tense, because it's restricted. So, and most of the tension that we carry, a lot of it comes from under the age of 7, especially if we grew up in violent or unpredictable homes, which many people did. Very few people grew up in like happy, healthy land. We've had many generations of traumas and consequential addiction and bad behavior, quite a bit of it. And so the stories that some people carry are just so astonishingly horrible that they could even walk into my office and appear functional. And then this is a way to really read the book of somebody's life. It really, vibrations don't lie. They reveal everything that's there. And I can determine if people were sexually molested as children before they remember it, because that sounds and feels a particular way and shows up in a particular place in the field. Accidents, injuries, breakups, moves, betrayals, bankruptcies, abortions, miscarriages, births, bad divorces. It all shows up as a perturbation. And the way that the tuning forks work is they will initially resonate with whatever perturbation is present. This allows them to be sort of diagnostic, where we can find what's wonky. And but then the body does this really amazing thing. So in this diagram, this is these hot spots that we encounter. And as we stick a fork in these hot spots and reflect back to the body, hey body, you sound pretty wonky right here, okay? If you've ever gotten to a mirror and haven't seen one in a while, and your hair is a mess and you have a poppy seed in your teeth, your first instinct is to groom yourself. And that is exactly what your field does when the fork is acting as a mirror in one of these hot spots, reflecting back to the body that it's out of order. So the body will use the coherent input of the fork, the fact that it's a steady, coherent rhythm, the fact that it is a specific tone and rhythm, and it will use it like a metronome, and it will find its own rhythm. It'll basically, very fundamentally, it will simply tune itself. It will use that reflection to bring itself in tune. And what that is a consequence of something relaxing. Something was in tension and there was noise in the signal because of it. And then the body releases the noise, goes back to its factory setting, and the tension releases. And then what was stuck in the field, right? It's almost like soul fragments, or this idea of soul retrieval, where in shamanism, there's a belief that when you have a particular trauma, a bit of your soul breaks off and gets stuck there. That's a hot spot. That's a bit of your soul stuck in a memory. And the tuning fork will get the dissonance that's holding the stuckness to resolve. The energy will then decouple from that spot, and then the tuning fork acts like a magnet, and that's what this movement is back to the center. That's the tuning fork guiding that energy that was frozen, that was not in flow, back into circulation, which causes the overall voltage of the field to go up. So when we have a lot of tension and we have a lot of resistance in the flow, people's batteries, their battery meter drops. Their battery meter drops. So imagine you've got a little battery meter inside on a scale of 1 to 100. Okay. So 100 is when you're in this totally optimized place, like right here, you're shining, you're golden, you're like completely vibrant and radiant and alive. Like that's 100. And 1 is you're mighty close to being dead. So where does your battery meter fall? Like where does your number come in at? And if it drops right in, maybe drop it in the chat just so we can see what you're noticing, if you've got a sense of it. Most people kind of know, they kind of, it drops right in and they have a sense of it. And so this whole process of what I call electric health is really about getting our voltage up, getting the noise, the resistance out of the flow of our electrical system so that we can fulfill our electric potential and really expand into the fullness of who we know we are. And, unfortunately, most of this tension is subconscious. You don't know that it's even there. Or, you know that something's wrong, but you don't necessarily know what it is. But our pain and our discomfort and our injuries can be a clue about where we are out of balance in our system. So this is the Biofield anatomy map. And this is what I discovered when I first started working in the field. And this was a process from about 2006 to about 2010. And I was exploring the field and I started having pattern recognition where I started to notice that every time I was moving the forks through the field and on the left side of the heart, that when they went atonal, they sounded sad, just like music seeks to approximate emotions, right? Fear is like dun, 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 and sadness has a certain tonal quality. The tuning forks, when they were in these specific memories, these sad memories, would sound sad, which I found so fascinating. And just like if we were listening to a sad song together, I wouldn't need to tell you that it was sad, right? Because you would just know. Like it was that own sort of innate knowing of what emotions sort of sounded and felt like that enabled me to decode this. And basically what's going on, as far as I can tell here, is that each one, of these standing waves holds a certain frequency band. So the emotion of sadness is in a particular expression, and the file drawer for that is off the left shoulder, right? So as we generate these memories, and at different wavelengths and frequency signatures, they get stored in the field in different places. And just like we all pretty much have the same internal anatomy, right? Our digestive tract is pretty much the same from person to person. We seem to have the same external anatomy as well. So the field is stratified in this sort of file drawer kind of way. It's also timelined in that energy moves away from us like hair as it's generated. So I find information from our gestation within the outer boundary, that plasma membrane of the field. Just inside that is birth. And then as we move along, like this person is 60, so I would find memories that were generated when they were 30, about 3 feet away from them. Most people, the field extends around 6 feet to the sides and back and front, and about 2 feet below and above And then there are these interesting features called the ancestral rivers that I found about 10 inches off either side of the body. The one on the left holds the ancestral information, the DNA of the birth mother. And when I stick a fork in that particular zone, I can read and hear and understand ancestral patterns. The rivers flow right through these two fixed spots, these little plasma balls that I can't move with a tuning fork. The mother is on the left and the father is on the right, and I can stick a fork in those little spots. And I can tell you all about the personality, the character of your mother or your father. And then if I hold the fork in between your body and the mother or father spots, I can tell you all about the quality of your relationship with those parents, which is very interesting. Generally, the imbalances on the right side are the more yang, hot, outgoing, more masculine imbalances. For like anger, shame, busyness, next steps, so the sort of outgoing stuff, or just at the solar plexus even. The balanced expression of the solar plexus is just an embodied power, a gentle power. When the yang imbalance of that is hot, it's angry, and the yin imbalance of that is wet and inward and powerless, right? And many people kind of go back and forth between being yin imbalanced or yang imbalanced, or blowing up and then shutting up, and we just kind of rock around a whole bunch and sort of struggle to find that nice balanced center in the middle and in the moment. And that's what sound healing really aims to do, is to get you centered, balanced, and present.
Can I just recap for a minute?
Yeah.
It's all really rich, lots of information. And if you guys are keeping up or have questions, please put them in the chat. But essentially, the toroidal field around us, is up, out, around, and then there's horizontal waves. And then, kind of like the tree rings, there are different places in the field and spaces that represent the different imbalances, and it'll show up as a distortion in the sound of a tuning fork, and the location in proximity to the body is going to kind of tell you what's happening, what that distortion is about, and that our body's innate healing ability, once it hears that vibration, and maybe it takes more than once, or it will help it, my words, like kind of get back to its perfected pattern, that our body knows how to get in balance, but this is like this reminder, and it kind of releases the distortion so that it can, I guess, be in harmony with whatever that particular pattern, sound, wave would be. Are we following along?
Yeah, no, that's a great summary. Yes, absolutely. And it's kind of goes against every model we've ever been taught. So it can be sort of hard to wrap your head around and kind of take some multiple exposure. But if I'm moving the fork through somebody's field here, let's say I'm on the left side of the solar plexus, which relates to our history of our relationship with our mother, feelings of powerlessness. And I might get to be about a quarter of the way in, and it gets really wonky. And I'm like, okay, this is around age 14. This is your relationship with your mother. This is a really difficult spot. What does that make you think of? And then they'll be like, oh God, my mom and I fought so much when I was 14. and I'm still kind of at odds with my mom. And so, we just hang out in that specific memory and let the body relax around it. And then we might hit other difficult moments with mom as in your life as we go on. And so we settle all that down. And then the next time you go see your mom, suddenly you don't have charge around. She's not getting under your skin because she's not plucking your strings, and all of these other resonant nodes of every time she'd ever gotten your goat are going off too. Those have all been settled. And so you're able to be in a situation like that with more neutrality. And this is something I've heard over and over and over again from people, that settling these old disturbances and just getting them to go into harmony and release and to relax can make interpersonal relationships so much easier. Because we experience now through the lens, if this is where our past is stored, then we can't then we're looking at now through the lens of everything that's ever happened to us. And this is how people get triggered, because
Exactly. So it addresses the trigger so that you can be present with the now, with what's happening now, instead of that lens of that filter of, oh, well, this happened, or, oh, I have that, disturbance with, or this relationship has not been whatever I wanted. So how does the fascia play into this? Does that
oh,
show
well,
up in the field?
that's a really good question. Well, the fascia can, working with fascia is really more of a body work kind of thing. I mean, we can do some manipulation of stuck fascia, but that's part of why I created the sonic slider. Where the heck did that go? This is a sonic slider, and this is a tuning fork that I designed so you just, is a weighted fork. You bump it on yourself, you activate it, and then you slide the handle of it on your whole body. And what this does, when you slide vibrating little metal rod here with pressure, it's kind of like dry brushing, but with physics and more pressure. That can help to release fascia knots. And so biofield tuning is a combination of working in the field, but also working on the body. And I've created like little amplifier boots that can make that vibration stronger. You can place it, in areas that are sore. Very often, if I'm working through the field and I get into a place that's really stuck, it takes a while for the resistance to let go, just from a field approach. So I'll go find where that tension is in the body, and I'll use the weighted forks on the body to interrupt it in the body. And then it's easier to move in the field. So we're really kind of working both on the body and in the field in order to change the way electricity is flowing through the body, to start to repattern it, rewire it, reform connections that have been broken from trauma or disassociation, and just get people back into their body and back into a sense of flow. Health. Flow is health.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
this is just kind of an interesting thing that I saw, that these glyphs have these spots on either side. And the purple thing is a plasma formation from a lab. But these are the same as the mother and father spots that I found in the field. And I just think that's really interesting that, ancient people who probably had more connection to ancestors and more connection to subtle energy created all these glyphs that have what I call the mother and father spots in them. And it's just kind of a curiosity of seeing this, repeating patterns. This is what I really looked for, is like what I'm discovering, can I find this correlated in other places as well? Can I put all this together into a big picture that makes sense in the context of other traditions and other perspectives that are also doing the same thing?
A question, and I just want you to clarify. The mother is always going to be on the left side of the body, and the father on the right.
Yes. Yeah, you're looking at somebody opposite, right? In that picture, it's like that person is facing you. So it can be a little confusing. Okay, so what we've observed as far as clinical benefits over the last, since 1996, increased creativity and resourcefulness. People go from being sort of stuck and not able to find their way out of whatever it is they're stuck in, to suddenly being able to locate resources. They become more creative. They become more likely to extract themselves from unhealthy or non-beneficial situations. They become better at whatever their game is. So many times people came in and said, I played the best game of golf in my life after our session, because it gets you to relax. And this is, really pretty simple. We're focused. We've had a lot of success with PTSD, which is really just a whole lot of those hotspots in the field, and a lot of tension and overload as a consequence. And as you sort of systematically go through the field, groom and settle all this down, people become much more able to process new information, and they become less triggery. Certainly had a great amount of success with pain. Not so much if somebody has something like a torn rotator cuff, but if they have pain that is, quote, psychosomatic, that is tension based, we can often eliminate it, sometimes in 15 or 20 minutes, just by getting the electricity, getting the body to relax, getting the electricity. Inflammation, the heat of inflammation is just excess electricity. It's too much current running through those wires. And anytime you have excess in one place, you end up with deficiency in another. And, this is how we get out of whack, is these dysfunctional tension patterns that we're carrying. We've seen diminished anxiety, which we have a study now that backs that up. This is an area where we have a lot of success, because anxiety is simply a rhythmic pattern. And when you find where it's flowing in the field and you stick a fork in it and you reflect that back to the body goes, wow, that's not right. And it works with that input to relax itself and to bring itself into a greater state of regulation. The body's designed to be in a state of regulation and harmony. We live in a very unnatural environment that induces a lot of stress in people. It's certainly not their fault in the vast majority of cases. We also see elimination of fears and phobias. I had a fellow fly up from Washington, D.C. to do a story on us, and part of the story was him receiving a tuning. And when he sent me the story after he wrote it, he mentioned about how when he flew from Washington to DC, he had a phobia around flying and he was always scared. And then when he flew home, it was gone. It was just gone. And that's something that we've had a lot of success with. People are like terrified of spiders, just being like, meh. Afterwards. So that's just a current running somewhere in the body, as something that triggers and elevates, and you just find the right place to stick the fork in and hold it there for the right amount of time. That whole pattern relaxes and releases, and then it doesn't run anymore. We certainly see a lot of improvement in emotional balance. I've seen many people come out of depression, come out of chronic anger, or whatever their imbalanced edge is again just sort of a pattern in the field. And when we sort that out, then the mind and the mental body, the emotional body, the physical body all come into better alignment.
Have you ever had any experience with eyes?
Some people
somebody
have
has like an imbalance in eyes, or
as far as like an improve, some people have found improvement in vision. I wouldn't say it's a common outcome, but it certainly has been reported. I certainly worked with people who have like heavy eyes or tiredness around their eyes. Sometimes just working in the back of the head, you can find areas of tension that are there and help them to release. So people will feel like their eyes are lighter or brighter. But more spare stories of like vision actually changing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. These are just some little graphs from this anxiety research study that we did. And I'll grab that link for you, Mary. I don't have it right now, but if anybody's interested in reading studies, I find them incredibly difficult to read and massively boring. But this is the juicy bits, the graphs that are easy to understand. And as you can see that these sort of traits of anxiety through self-reporting went down dramatically every single week. And all the people who came into this study with clinical anxiety, every single person, the 13 of the 15 who completed it, did not have clinical anxiety on the other side. And they received 3 Biofield tuning sessions, 1 a week for 3 weeks, just an hour-long Zoom session. The graph on the right is kind of interesting. This was an analytic software that tracked the use of negative emotion words. So every few days, people would get a text. It was like, how's your day going? And then they would have to leave a voice note in response to that. And then all of these voice notes were fed through the software analysis. And what they found was that the amount of negative words that people used to describe their experience day to day dropped, and it dropped fairly significantly. And this was compared to, they also used this software in a 9-week NIH funded compassion meditation study, and the needle doesn't move. So 9 weeks of self-compassion meditation, and there's no change in negative word use, which just goes to show me that sitting around with yourself doing nothing doesn't change anything, like that we really kind of need other
I will
input.
be self-compassionate. I will be self-compassionate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to change, what happens. I mean, personally, I'm not a huge fan of meditation. I think we've been told to sit down and shut up our whole lives, and that we don't need any more sitting down and shutting up. We need to stand up. We need to make noise. We need to express. We need to dance. We need to sing. We need to be human, because that is what humans have always done. They have always gotten up and made noise. And so I think that trying to sit down and shut up is not what most people need to do. Most people are all jammed up with things they haven't said, feelings that they haven't felt, things they haven't expressed, and it feels really good to make noise. I'll talk a little bit more about that later.
And that's pretty fascinating about the anxiety results. And think about how many people are on medication that could have a biofield tuning and eliminate, possibly eliminate the need for medication.
Well, I mean, this is what we've seen in many years of clinical practice, never mind official research. We've seen person after person get off antidepressant meds, anti-anxiety meds, thyroid meds, as their body is given the opportunity to fix itself. So yes, I mean, this is a disruptive technology as far as the pharmaceutical companies are concerned, because they like having customers for life, and we're coming in and saying 3 1-hour tuning fork healings are taking away your customers. So and then what we're in now is so this was just a feasibility study, but we are doing a full study with a control group who are receiving cognitive behavioral therapy. That's our control group. And we plan on submitting it to mainstream journals. So this one was in a complementary journal. But this, we're going for along the prescribed routes to change the paradigm, to really, because this is a much more efficient, elegant way of looking at health in general through the biofield. The biofield is primary. The rhythms and the patterns of the flows moving through the electrical system is what gives rise to the molecules in the body. So it's a much more causative primary area to work in, rather than trying to fiddle with the chemistry after the waves have already done their work. So one of the things that is a kind of an important part of this equation is understanding what it is about the vibrating tuning fork that enables it to actually magnetically adjust, right? The tuning fork really becomes like a magnet, and just like a magnet will move iron filings, there's very much this feeling that we're using this vibrating tuning fork like a magnet to move the magnetism within the field, because we know that magnetic fields actually guide and inform electric currents. So what we're doing is we are adjusting the way electricity is flowing through the body by manipulating the magnetic field. We're doing an adjustment. It's kind of like a chiropractic adjustment, bringing the magnetic field and the electric flow into greater structural integrity.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So what I found is that a vibrating tuning fork actually does produce electromagnetic charge. And the reason for this is, so unfortunately, the internet has really changed a lot. And you guys probably noticed this as well, that when I was researching my master's thesis in 2010 to 2012, or my first book, like, you could search on Google and you could find real stuff. And now when you search on Google, you get pages and pages and pages of Big Brother approved, and a lot of it is simply not true. It's simply not true. For example, we're still being told that space is a vacuum, okay? Now, it's very hard for me to understand how, if our atmosphere is just gases, right? There's no solidity there, allegedly, in the round Earth model. How can there be a division where there's a vacuum on the other side? Right? So that doesn't really make sense. Okay. But also, there are realizing, or we're being told, that there is actually, space isn't an empty vacuum, it's filled with plasma, and certainly I believe it's filled with ether. So, but even if we take kind of space out of the equation, because I don't know about you folks, but I'm finding more and more people in my circles are getting hip to the idea that the earth probably actually is flat and not actually round. Now, I will leave my inner jury out on that, but I'm just very surprised to see how many people are actually starting to think that the flat earth model makes more sense. Because where is the proof that we're actually spinning impossibly fast around our axis and then around the sun, and then even impossibly faster, that the whole universe is hurtling through, that the whole galaxy is hurtling through space at like 1,000,000 miles an hour? The stars always look the same, right? Where is the proof that we're actually doing that? And I don't know. It's really good to question everything, right? And I'm sure that you all do. But I do find that the more things are rammed down our throat and that people are ridiculed for believing otherwise, and I've been through this with the biofield, that people have been, there's no such thing as a biofield, and there's nothing sillier than a tuning fork. And I've had to contend with that for many decades, where this work has been ridiculed, it's been denied, it says it doesn't exist, and yet I know from my own senses, which I trust, and you as a dowser trust your own senses, right? And our senses actually tell us that the earth is flat and that everything is spinning. That's what our senses tell us. But we've been told we can't trust our senses, and that we need to look to authorities to tell us what is true. And I'm just skeptical about that. I'm extremely skeptical about everything. I used to drive my mom crazy. I was born skeptical. But that is what has enabled me to kind of look beyond what I've been told and start to make these other observations and trust myself as a natural philosopher and as a naturally born scientist, to trust my own observations and to not let some scientism priest tell me there is no such thing as a biofield, when the science of it is actually very simple. It's obvious that the body has electric current running through it, and anything that has an electric current running through it has a magnetic field around it, and that's indisputable. So how they managed to take something as simple as this and relegate it to the realm of woo and pseudoscience for so long is kind of puzzling to me. Like, what's the energy and energy medicine? It's electricity. I'm sorry, why was there ever a problem with this? I don't understand. Right? So this is just super important. Part of my work is to just encourage people to question everything. So I questioned this idea that sound is not part of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're told that sound is not part of the electromagnetic spectrum. It's somehow separate. Okay. But we're told, and the reason why we're told this is because allegedly light doesn't need a medium to travel through. So the light that allegedly travels through space, through the empty vacuum of space from the sun to the earth, is traveling through nothing. Well, I'm sorry, when did waves ever travel through nothing? That's like saying that the waves in the ocean are traveling through nothing. Like, waves don't travel through nothing. Like, so that doesn't make any sense at all, right? But sound, so light doesn't need a medium to travel through, but sound does. Okay. And I would just volunteer that any waves traveling through ether, because remember, the ether has been taken out of our cosmological story. Any wave traveling through the ether is going to be dielectric. The dielectric ether, anything, whether we call it electricity, whether we call it sound, whether we call it light, whether we call it music, It is all a wave passing through the ether, and as a consequence, it is creating positive and negative charges. So, and where do you draw the line between what is light and what is sound, right? Because there's two definitions of sound. One is within the range of human hearing, which is 20 to 20,000 hertz. But there's another definition of sound that is propagated waves of any frequency. Well, when you get to be at a certain frequency, that turns into light. So where exactly is the dividing line between what we call light and what we call sound? And that doesn't make any sense either. So I would say that all propagating frequencies, regardless of what category we compartmentalize them into, are part of the electromagnetic spectrum. The electromagnetic spectrum is all that is. That is our experience of life, is the electromagnetic spectrum. We're also told that sound is a longitudinal wave, okay? But it's always represented as a sine wave. So what's up with that, right? And people, I've gotten into arguments with people who are like asserting Google and Wikipedia at me. And I'm like, there's way more to this than just this idea that sound is a longitudinal wave and it needs a medium to travel through. Sound actually propagates spherically, spirally, and contains complex geometric information. It is simultaneously a sine wave, a longitudinal wave, and a scalar wave. It is producing all of this, and it's propagating spirally.
Okay, can I pause you for one second? This is a lot of like really rich info. So, okay, super surprised. I mean, I guess I just never thought about it, but that at a certain point, light becomes a sound wave, or was it sound becomes a light wave?
So there's a quote which I think is pretty useful, and anybody who has synesthesia can attest to this, that light is visible sound and sound is audible light. It's just the way that our apparatus is designed to interpret waves in those wavelengths. Some waves we hear, some waves we see, but they're all waves with information.
Right. So I learned I had synesthesia. So I didn't know there was a word for that until a few years ago. So that makes sense. But I see the scientific piece that you're showing us now. So that is kind of fascinating. And when you're talking about contains complex geometric information, I'm thinking, when you put the grains of sand on top of like a drum or something, and it forms these amazing geometric patterns. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, so this is a cymoscope, and it's the same idea where if you put water in there and a little speaker underneath, each frequency will produce a specific pattern. And so I actually have a little video here. This is the sonic slider. So this is a 93.96 hertz, and this is through a cymoscope. And we can see what the pattern looks like. This is just a specific frequency made visible. So that's just the amplitude increasing to the point where it holds a stable. And what's really interesting about this eightfold pattern is that most of us know what the symbol for peace looks like, but I'd never looked up the symbol for harmony, and it looks just like this, which is really interesting.
Which is exactly what it does, right? It restores harmony to the human biofield.
Yeah, it really does. It's sort of interesting. Let's see what else we got here. Oh no, I can't get off this slide. Okay, here we go. Okay, so what this also means is that our voices make electricity. Our voices make electricity. Our words are so powerful and so creative. And if you're a kid and you're being yelled at by a parent, you know that the force of that hits you and really can, get right in and have impact. And that also words of love and care and affection, right? That the way that sound moves us, and just the incredible power of voices and especially many voices together, which creates a huge amount of energy and power. And so do tuning forks. So this is just kind of a summary. Tuning forks act as a mirror, a metronome, and a magnet. They work with the principles of resonance and entrainment. So they initially resonate with whatever noises in the signal, and then they entrain the body into a more coherent expression. A strong, coherent signal will overtake a weak, incoherent signal and entrain it into coherence, right? So this is where a lot of empaths fall down, in that their signal gets overwhelmed by other people's, and they just like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed by your vibes and I'm a victim because I'm an empath and I'm so sensitive. And I spent decades like that. And the trick is to make your own signal strong and coherent so that you kind of entrain people around you into coherence, and then you're not a victim anymore of their bad vibes, because you are using physics to overpower them with a strong, coherent signal. Applying forks with attention and intention makes them an extension of our own minds. So when I've got a vibrating tuning fork and I'm listening and I'm feeling and I'm being present and I'm intending, it really is kind of like a magic wand. I can do way more with a tuning fork than I can with my hand, quite honestly. And I can understand way more, and it's way more interesting. Our bodies are self-tuning instruments that are designed for harmony. And we are designed to be in harmony with the cosmos, with the natural world. What gets in the way is what I've been calling our ego firewall. Sound also engages syntropy, which is the opposite of entropy, and levity, which is the opposite of gravity. And those are forces of nature that we're not told about. We hear about entropy and gravity, like everything's falling apart and falling down. But we don't really hear about the force that brings things together and lifts things up, a tree growing up towards the sky because of the forces of levity. Many things are hidden from us that are super useful to know about. So you were talking, Mary, earlier about the woman who uses her voice to sing tones. Now, I have learned in the past how to use my voice to scan people's bodies in very much the same way that I use a tuning fork. But honestly, it's a little weird to go up to somebody and get really close to them and be like, ooh, it's just a little weird. It's a lot easier to do it with this. That said, I do believe that our voices are more powerful instruments of healing than tuning forks are, simply because we have so much range and so much that can be done with our voices. And so that led me to, I showed you earlier the Biofield anatomy map. This is the sonic anatomy maps. This is a program that I do called Sing the Body Electric with two Australian brothers. And then we came up with this body of work without even trying. We were working together on something else. And this really came through us and really felt like a remembering that this was something we had done together in a past life or past lives. But essentially, we discovered that there are a whole bunch of different tones that resonate in specific areas of the body. And we lead weekend workshops where we bring people in, we have everybody sing happy birthday to themselves at the beginning. And then we go through all of these vocal exercises where we don't sing a single song, but we tone these sounds. And then at the end, and this is just some of what we do, there's more to the content than this, but this is just a sort of taste. And then at the end, we have everybody sing happy birthday to themselves again. And what happens, the transformation is so remarkable, because what this does is it gets people to understand their whole body as an instrument and use their whole body to make sounds from different areas. So when they go to sing happy birthday again, they're using their whole body, they're expressive, they're creative, and they enjoy it, right? So it's really about liberating to me, health is really about freedom, and that's freedom to enjoy your body, to enjoy your voice, to enjoy your life, to enjoy your loved ones, right? To really just be able to show up and not be triggered and reactive and a jerk and a fussy and, ants in your pants or whatever, all the levels of dysfunction that we can experience, and to just have more fun. I really think that as I've seen many people heal over the years, they all become funnier, more fun, more free. They laugh more. And laughter really is the best medicine, right?
That's
Music,
that
laughter,
levity, right?
levity. Exactly. Levity.
Wasn't joy, I think on the Hawkins scale, higher, one of the highest frequencies that there is?
Yeah, it's wonderful to feel joy, and to obviously life is up and down, and we're going to have times where we have discomfort or we have loss or life throws us curveballs, It's like that's the comedy and tragedy, the ups and downs of life. But so many people aren't free to enjoy the ups because they're, still stuck in the traumas of some pretty bad downs.
Right. That's that filter of the past.
Yeah, yeah. But the beautiful thing is that we can go in and we can clean the filter. Like the filter is cleanable. And I think that that's
We don't have to
really
stay in the
important.
aquarium with dirty water. We can clean
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Clean that tank. Get rid of that algae. A lot of people have algae growing in them.
Okay, so
Um,
kind of back to your sonic anatomy. So as making those sounds, does that sort of do something a little bit similar that the tuning fork, it can help to kind of clear any dissonance in maybe some of those areas?
yeah, definitely. And tension, right? Because any place where you go to sing and you're like, wherever it is,
And
um,
how many people have wounding and stories around singing in their
huge,
voice? There's so much
huge.
shaming that goes on.
So much shaming, so much pain, so much trauma around the voice. And this really helps to liberate that. It helps to release that tension from the inside out so that you get past the trauma and into how cool it is that you can make these sounds. Like just for an example, the tailbone sound is wah. And so you just hang out and you get people to be like, wah. So you're just resonating, bringing your voice all the way down into the tailbone. The front of the belly is you, and you just really sound from there. The back of the throat, this one's kind of cool, is bow, bow, and that can really
Oh.
stimulate the thyroid. Um,
Mm.
one of the brothers' daughters used to get car sick. Every time they would go for a drive, they had a cabin a couple hours away in the mountains, and she would be throwing up in the back seat. And they discovered that if she went through, there were selective tones from the sonic anatomy, that if they all toned in the car together with her for a while, then that would stabilize her and she wouldn't get sick. And
Wow.
she figured that out. So kind of amazingly, so here's a girl who's 7 years old who has just figured out that she doesn't need to attach something to her ear or put something on her wrist or take a pill, that she can use her own voice to stabilize and regulate her system.
Oh yeah, and doing it together. I've done
Yeah.
toning with groups of people, and that's really powerful. It feels like it just clears not only each person, but just it reverberates
Yeah.
out.
It does. It reverberates. And so this is a combination, we use the tuning forks from the outside, you use your voice from the inside, and we break up and iterate these old patterns that are just, the pattern of you that you're not digging, that isn't working, is just a pattern. And so sound breaks that pattern up. And then because it's harmonious, it allows the pattern to reset or to fall back down into a place of greater harmony and greater balance and greater freedom. Because you're not stuck so much anymore. So this frees the voice. And really, our voice, so much of who we are is really communicated in our voice, right? There's been many movies and shows where it's like, oh, the girl looks really hot. And then you hear her talk and she's got a voice like this. And people are like, oh, my. Doesn't matter how beautiful somebody is, that if their voice isn't pleasing, right, then
Right.
that's going to be not
It's
attractive.
it's diminishing. Yeah.
Yeah. And a voice that doesn't sound right is a consequence of tension. It's coming back to that tension again. So this is just that way. The way that we heal is really by relaxing, and then the body just sorts itself out. I mean, it's really pretty simple. Relax and increase the amount of energy that's flowing coherently through your body, and then all of a sudden your body's got enough juice to fix itself. And it's got easy passage, to everywhere that it needs to get to. So this is just a little pet peeve of mine, and I think in part some of this language does come from the book Power versus Force that you were talking about, Mary, because that hierarchical scale of 200 to 1,000, it's like shame is the lowest vibration, and then people are like, oh, I shouldn't feel shame because it's such a low vibration. We need to feel shame. It's shame that stops you from living in a pig pen, or eating the whole pint of ice cream, or stealing something from somewhere. Like if we got caught in any of these things, we would be ashamed. I used to have a dog, a 220-pound English Mastiff, and you could leave that dog in the house all day with a steak on the table, which he could reach no problem. And he never would, because he had a couple early experiences of being shamed. And he was like, whoa, I don't like that. So he wouldn't be bad. It's shame that stops us from doing the wrong thing. It's important. And in my experience, the kinds of people that we call narcissists are incapable of feeling shame. They're incapable of realizing they did something wrong and apologizing. And, they just go into defense because they're not letting themselves feel shame. So I think this sort of like ranking and judging particular emotions as bad or low or negative isn't really helpful. And also this idea that we're moving on this plane, that the only option is, you're either an emotional wreck or you're Christ or Buddha up here at the top. So then everybody's thinking that they have to be Christ or Buddha instead of just being a human being and letting themselves have the experience of all of the different emotions that we have as human beings. When we look at something like anger or rage or hate or shame and we label them bad, then we're going to resist feeling them. And what does that do? That creates tension in us, because holding back on an emotion is a wave that wants to move through you. And if you've labeled and judged a particular emotion as bad or wrong, you're going to try to stop yourself from feeling it. And this is what people, when they do what I call stuff and blow, where they put up and shut up and put up and shut up and stuff and stuff and stuff their anger because it's bad until they can't take it anymore, and then they explode, which is rude. Nobody likes to be exploded on, right? And if you'd handled it better along the line, you wouldn't be blowing up on me right now and blaming me.
Well, and it's also that assumption that the energy only goes up and down, but
yeah, only goes up and down.
It's all of that.
It's
right?
everywhere. And what I've really found is that as we become more coherent, more healed, more whole, we expand in every direction. We get bigger, right? And maybe some of you have found with dowsing rods that, you do an energy treatment to somebody and their field gets bigger. It doesn't go up. It doesn't go tall and skinny. It gets bigger all around. So what we want to do with our vibration is we want to get our vibration in tune. We want to raise our voltage, right? And we want to expand our consciousness. We want to expand into the full potential of who we are. So when I first was learning to do the dowsing rods, I was playing with them outside with my husband, and so I go to walk towards them, kind of waiting for them to swing open, and they're like crossing. I'm like, okay, Patrick told me that means I need to go back. So I'm going back, and I'm going back, and I'm going, and I end up like 30 feet away from him before the rods finally swung open. Right, 30 feet away, and he's sitting there like, yep. Like he knows that he's like that big of a character, very expansive, right? So I think that I do think that book was useful, but I also think there's this downside of people, and then people get stuck like trying to raise their vibration. Just think about how that feels in your body. Like, I'm trying to raise my vibration. Like, what kind of nonsense is that? And what's wrong with low vibes anyway? We need delta waves to sleep, right? So even linguistically, it's kind of incorrect. So I just, I get what people are saying when they say razor vibration, but I'm like the grammar police showing up and being like, that's not the best way to express this. So just kind of think about that if you go to use that term. Okay, you guys can take a picture of this if you want, or we can share it somehow, but we're on Facebook, Instagram. I have a very extensive YouTube channel. I've got a lot of free tunings on there. I just did a whole series called Sonic Sundays where wow, is it really already 9:20? How did it get to be so late?
We're having a good time. We're in the flow. We're expanded.
Yeah, we're
Yes, I
expanding.
highly recommend tuning into the Eileen's YouTube channel, because the Sonic Sunday series was great. It's like 45 minutes and you cover a lot of ground and do tuning. It highly recommend, well, all of your stuff, but that's kind of a fun, easy way to do. Do we have time to do a little
We
tuning?
do. We have time to do a tuning, but then we won't get to too much Q&A, but I didn't see. Let me just see if there's some questions here that I can answer real quick. Yeah, I agree, Diane. When people get stuck in one emotion, right? I agree. And that is a problem. We don't want to get stuck in any emotion, right? We want to like let it feel it, let it kind of guide us or move us and then move on. And getting stuck in anything. I mean, I think even getting stuck in happiness is a little inane, right? Like we don't like there's that's so that sometimes you need to be sad or angry or just human, and we don't want to. It's like playing the same note on the piano over and over again. Like being human is such a rich experience. We want to be free to kind of flow with the whole thing
I
and
like
not
to
put
think of
labels or judgments.
yeah, I like to think of our emotions as happening in waves. And
Yeah,
if you just think of yourself as a screen door and allow that wave, that water, whatever, to go through the door instead of trying to shut the door and block it, you know. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Surrender to it. Okay, so let's just hang out. So, do we want to do a hard stop at the bottom of the hour, or
We have some
we have
flexibility.
some wiggle room?
We do.
Okay. Um, like being authentically human. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being authentically human. We don't have to be Christ. We don't have to be Buddha. Just take that. Like, you just don't have to. Be human and it's okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play around with a few different forks, just kind of expose everybody to the sounds and sort of understand what it is that they do. Like even through Zoom, I can tune into the group that's here and then everyone who'll ever watch the videos. So this is a data set. I'm just going to stick a fork in the data set and listen to it. And that's the way the ether works. I don't need to explain it to y'all. You understand that. Um, and what the sound kind of goes into the body and opens up space. This is the whole idea of what is it doing? It's relaxing. It's the only claim I make is that it just helps you to relax. And once you relax, then then you got energy to do other things. It's not stuck in tension, then it's gonna flow to bust clutter or whatever you need to do. And so that's really what, receiving a series of sessions helps people to feel lighter, more grounded, more free, and more creative generally. And more spacious. I think that's what we really want, is that feeling of spaciousness. Okay, so let's just get started. So take a moment to just close your eyes and kind of take in a baseline assessment of how you feel right now. Just kind of do a little inner scan, see where you might notice any tension or discomfort, or maybe you're hungry. Whatever it is that you're noticing, just kind of be aware of that. And then what I'd like you to do is to find your breath to find its way down into your lower abdomen. So that might be a few breaths to kind of work your way down into your belly. And once you really can fill the lower belly, I want you to use your imagination and intention to exhale down into the ground. So out the tailbone, down the legs, and out the feet. And do that with a little sound. Let's go centering and grounding breath. Just kind of bring yourself into this sort of somatic awareness of your own body and your own breath, and keep your mind quiet and your ears open. And let's just listen to a few forks and see what we notice. So this first one is 174 hertz. So what the fork is doing is sort of reflecting the information that's in the data set. So it feels I'm definitely getting pain. It feels like there's definitely more than a couple people who have pain going on. There's also like kind of a feeling of grief and sort of like being at the sort of end of a rope with strong feelings. Um, so that might be something that's really up and acute in a few people, and why that's coming through. Certainly, we all have that in our past in some way or another. Um, but there's a whole like every feeling makes a particular sound. And when I'm working with a data set, the strong currents will come through, or the stuff that's in the middle of the bell curve where most of the information is coming from. So the tuning forks, this one is just kind of going through and it's sort of resonating with some of the discomfort that's present. But now as I come back, it's going to go in and it's going to start interrupting those patterns. It's going to start to break them up, and just see what you notice while that happens. And you might find yourself wanting to yawn or stretch or move or even make some sound. I might start really wiggling a whole bunch here because sometimes that's what happens when I'm working. And if that movement arises in you, see if you can follow it. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. You don't want to fake it. You just want to be with it. If something inside you wants to move around, then let it. So what I'm finding interesting in this group that I don't really see in a lot is that there's really a lot of like mediumship here, or the ability to really communicate with finer things, like etheric things or ancestors or elementals or things like, maybe elementals is the best word. There's a kind of intelligence in the third eye and a seeing of things in the natural world that's in this group that isn't in most data sets. So most of you have got this connection to that, which is a really interesting thing to see. It's kind of like magic. It's magical. I guess it isn't kind of like, it is magical. Okay, so that was the 174, and I'm going to come in now with 144 hertz, and this is also going to kind of keep on kind of breaking up these old patterns and helping them to reset. So we'll just listen to this one for a little bit. And just notice if you're holding your breath and you need to take a breath. Good. Okay. We're going to do one more that is 528 hertz. So what I want you to do with this one is, and to realize that what I was talking about earlier about how we live in a plasma atmosphere, right? And how we're breathing in light, and that light is going into your blood, and that light is going to all of your cells through your blood. So I want you to, as we're listening to this one, really very consciously breathing in light, like through the nose into the head, really feeling, bringing that light, and then you can maybe infuse it with a coherent emotion as well, like gratitude, love, appreciation. Maybe there's a particular place in nature that's your special spot, and it makes you feel a particular way, that particular feeling. And I want you to just breathe in the light and that coherent feeling and just bring it to every cell in your body as we use this fork. Okay, here we go. And you can almost also imagine that it's got a slightly helium quality to it. So it's got levity, and it can go into places that might be collapsed or flattened, and just sort of open them up, lift them up. Okay, last one. Good. And take one last big breath into the belly. Exhale down to the ground. Makes a little sound on that exhale. Good. And then take a moment to just do another kind of internal scan, kind of baseline assessment, and just see if you notice anything different. Does anything feel kind of any different in that terrain? And maybe whatever you notice, drop a note in the chat if you like. Drop a word or two about what you're noticing and how you feel now. It's just a few minutes of sound, but even if you just notice you feel a little more relaxed or a little lighter.
I definitely feeling, I had a bit of a headache when we started, and tension down the right side of my neck and shoulder, and that has totally dissipated.
Nice.
Thank you. Yeah, and I see, let's see, usually with loud sounds, my tinnitus goes crazy, but not this time.
That's good.
And someone is feeling kind of elevated. Yeah,
that's that levity of sound, right? It kind of like lifts and lightens. Yeah. And it's not uncommon, Mary, when I do a little tuning like this, that people will be like, oh, I had pain and now it's gone, or I had a headache and now it's gone. And just that kind of shifting and opening. Yeah.
I think we'll all probably sleep well tonight.
Yeah, that's often the case. That's definitely one of the things that wasn't on my list, but many people said I, slept better after that than I have in years. So that's I don't know if anybody has any kind of pressing questions. I'm going to take a minute or two just to answer questions.
I know you said you had if you have a question, put it in the chat. And then you said you had a class coming up, Eileen, right?
Oh, that's right. I do. So I have a 5-week class that's going to be 5 2-hour live virtual classes. They're going to be on Tuesdays from 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern. It's called Get Electrically Healthy with Eileen, and it will be what I do, which is sort of a combination of education, coaching, and tuning, and really helping people to reframe. We've been so conditioned to look at life chemically and mechanically, and think about drugs or supplements or surgery or physical therapy. But when we move to the level of electricity, of vibration, of information, health is so much easier here. And since I've really come to understand and to practice the tenets of electric health, I'm going to be 55 in a few months. I don't have any pain. I don't have any issues. I'm rock solid. We're knock on wood. As far as health goes, and I eat. People are very surprised to learn that I eat cheeseburgers and French fries and cocktails and bagels with cream cheese, and like I threw everybody else's advice out the window and really looked to find what really worked best for me. And it's not what you think it is, And I think why so many people struggle to get healthy following the prescribed routes is because they don't work. They just don't work. But electric health does. And it does it very elegantly, and it's really different than what you might think. I mean, one of the number one rules is don't lie. Don't lie about anything. No little white lies. You want to stay in integrity. You want everything that comes out of your mouth to be truth, right? Nobody ever tells you that, but that's such an important part of keeping your voltage up. So we'll talk all about the things that raise your voltage, all about the things that lower your voltage, and how you can start to really start to become free and to become radiantly healthy by looking at life through this lens. And then I'll be doing tunings in each one of them to kind of support rewiring the body from this sort of old stuck place into a new, more free place. And so that is you can find that at biofieldtuningstore.com. Get electrically healthy with Eileen. So that's coming up. And then we have
Does someone need to have a tuning fork to do that class?
Yeah, we do want you to have a few forks to enhance your experience, because I've really found one is the sonic slider. So that you can do this and get in the habit of doing this, which absolutely helps support flow. And then the other one that we want you to have is the 528, because this one is just so, right? It's just such a pretty, nice tone. You can use it to clear space. You can use it to focus your attention. It's just a super useful little fork to have, and we're going to be talking about how to use that.
Was that the second fork that you did tonight?
That was the last one.
That was the last one.
Yeah. So so the best thing to do, May 9th is when the class starts. Get electrically healthy with Eileen. Go to biofieldtuningstore.com to find info on that. Yeah. And then we have a certificate program. We do have a training in Biofield Tuning that is all online currently. And it's super fun and easy to learn, especially if you're a dowser, you're going to pick it up right away. And if you like kind of falling into rabbit holes where there's a lot to learn, because this whole language of vibration, it's very shamanic in a way. It's sort of, because it creates all these overtones and undertones, it opens up access to the subtle realms more. And you just kind of can be amazed at how it accentuates your perception even further. And then it helps you to help people, which always feels really good. So it's a good combination with a dowsing practice.
That's great. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. I am very grateful. So if you guys don't know, Eileen's website is biofieldtuning.com, and she's got classes there, and there's all sorts of wonderful free things you can purchase, lots of information, all good stuff. And this will also come out on the recording, so you guys can hear this again.
Mary, I just thought of one other thing that people might be interested in, and that is that sonic anatomy, the tones. We're going to be live at Kripalu. I know most of you guys are in Texas, but if you want to come to New England, Kripalu is an adult retreat center in Massachusetts, and we're doing a live Sing the Body Electric weekend workshop there. There's a whole bunch of people making all kinds of sounds, and I tune the group. But it's wildly fun, and your voice will be very different afterwards. So some of you might be interested and want to come to that. And that's, I'll just type this in the chat here. Sing the Body Electric. Yeah, at Kripalu. Well, my brothers are Australian, so maybe we will, oops, I sent that to Sue as a direct message. I don't know how that happened. Everyone in meeting. Mhm. Sorry, Sue. Okay, Sing the Body Electric at Kripalu. So you can just look that up if anybody's interested. But we might come to Australia someday, so stay tuned.
Well, yeah, and if you come to Tech, well, I'm just going to invite you to Texas now. We'll figure the rest of the other stuff out. Yeah, that would be great. Um, let's see. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We run on donations. So if you'd like to make a donation to kind of keep us going, it's in our newsletter. You can do PayPal, send checks, all of the above. So thank you for that. And thank you for the people who have donated. And next month in May, we're having Sandy Mack as our presenter, and she is going to be talking about minding your business. So it's not only how to help you in your business, but even if you don't have a business, the business of your life. So it's a class she's never done before, and it's going to have some really helpful information as she always does. So lots to look forward to. Thank you so much, everybody, for showing up, and thank you for watching this in the future and sharing. And Eileen, this has been amazing. I'm just so grateful and thankful that you've joined us. And I hope everybody just continues to expand their electrical energy field.
Yes.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Thank you, Mary, and thank you everyone for your attention. Everybody stay well.
Thank you.